point, which is the best part I really like about our meetings. It's the most entertaining thing. I think of eating popcorn and everything because it's like a show to me. But our carbolization yogurt will suffice instead of popcorn. So our first speaker this morning is Mike Slattery. If we look at the history of human existence, we will see that for the most part, civilization has been an endless desert of suffering with an occasional oasis of relative peace, freedom, and happiness. The truth be told, though, most people have had to struggle with disease, famine, oppression, deprivation, and endless fear, punctuated with periods of terror as we see today. In short, life has not been filled with love, kindness, joy, and understanding. A convenient explanation for this type of condition in people's lives taught to us through our religious belief is original sin. Speaking for 7 to 10 minutes today, please join me in welcoming our first speaker this morning, Mike Slattery.
Original sin. It was a concept that was created by St. Augustine or Augustine, depending on what syllables you want to put the word, in the 1st century AD. It was created between the years of 396 and 430. And in this doctrine, Augustine states that everybody born is born sinful. That means that we are born with a built-in urge to do bad things and disobey God. Because of this concept, though, we were told that we are bad from birth. And we must feel guilty of this misconceived fallacy. Let me explain. Many years ago, there was this king and kingdom. And within this kingdom was the largest army. They had the most food. The subjects were paying their taxes and tithing to the king, and everything was just fantastic. Well, as you know, in life cycles, the king and kingdom came upon hard times. The land was not producing the food as it should, and because of that, the king had to deploy his army throughout the kingdom to keep the peace, because the people weren't producing the food, couldn't pay the tithe, and weren't paying their taxes. What was the king to do? Well, what he did, the king went to his cardinals, bishops, and knights, and he asked each one of them, what do you think I can do to get my kingdom back, to subjugate my subjects? They all had different answers, none of which were acceptable to the king. So what the king did, he put out an edict to the entire kingdom that said, I need help to get my kingdom back, to get my subjects to pay tithe, to pay their taxes. Well, he didn't get any answers until a small advertising agency in downtown Kingdom, run by 2 entrepreneurs, John Bolt and Spin Meister. And the name of their agency was Bullmeister and Associates. Well, they got a hold of this, and they said, wow, within this edict, the king was going to give half the kingdom to whoever was able to bring his subjects back to the way he thought they should be, and give his virgin daughter in marriage. Ooh. Well, these 2 young men thought, man, this is a great idea, great things we can do. So they created an advertising campaign, and they went to the king and they explained to him that with this campaign we can get everybody back into the fold. Well, the king wasn't real sure about advertising at this time, so what he did, he said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, young man. I'm going to give you 60 days to make this work. Doesn't work. Off with your heads. It's going to be dead people. So they said that's okay, because they had that much confidence as to how they were going to bring the subjects back. So they started their advertising campaign, and 15 days afterwards, absolutely nothing happened. So they went back to the king, asking him for more than 60 days, because it takes time for their ads to get sunk in to the subjects. The king said, you know what, guys? It's not going to happen. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm only going to cut it down. You only have 20 more days and nights to get this to work. And if it doesn't work, off with your head. Whoa! So these two guys were getting a little antsy, a little anxiety, and they weren't too sure of what they were going to do, so they went up to the mountain. And they went up there because they were going to brainstorm and come up with a great idea that was going to make it happen, and they only had 20 days to do it. Well, unfortunately, the 19th day came, and they had no idea. So they laid down to sleep that night, knowing that the next day they were dead men. All of a sudden that night, boom! A bolt of lightning hit this tree they were sleeping under, and it woke them up. And with that, John said to Spin, I got it! I got it! Spin said, well, what is it that you have? He says, I got the idea. What is it? Original sin. Original sin. Spin said, well, what is that? He says, I will tell you when we get cleaned up and get in front of the king. And then we'll all know what it is, and it's going to work. So they went down from the mountain, got all cleaned up. That afternoon, they were standing in front of the king. And they were saying, John was telling the king how this was going to work. Since all of your subjects were not born as part of your family of the king, they are not worthy. So they're sinners, and because they're sinners, that creates guilt. You're not part of the kingdom. You're guilty. And in order to become part of the kingdom and have the king's forgiveness, you have to pay taxes and tithe. And with that, the more you pay, the more the graces you are with the kingdom. Well, the king liked that idea. But he said, what about my cardinals, bishops, and knights? No problem. No problem. All they have to do is stand in front of you and do penance, and they become within your graces. They don't have to pay anything. Well, he really liked that idea. And he put that in place because he knew from this that guilt would bring all of the subjects into the kingdom. So John got half the kingdom. Spin married the virgin daughter, and they lived happily ever after. Someone once said that the pen is mightier than the sword, but I submit to you that guilt is mightier than the pen. Mr. Toastmaster.